What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So as y'all know, today is indeed the reset day for the online time trials here in Gran Turismo 7. We did have the Ford Focus last week. We're currently going to have the Daytona course here, which is going to reset next Thursday. Then we're going to have the newest one with the lovely Ferrari Testarossa. Now, I would say this track is probably going to be on the interesting side. It's the only vehicle you can run. I am currently sitting at a 2.47% with a 138.5 on this one. And I gotta admit, I did end up messing up pretty bad in one of the turns, but I was like, you know what, let's run with it. I still did end up getting a decent score. Goes to show to not give up in one of the events, even though you might end up messing up a corner. Besides that, though, let's jump right into this here. So let's do this one. I did end up using the blue color and jump right into this event. Now, as always, though, before I do end up going over the track portion of it, which is going to be the track over here, I first do want to talk about my assist and my controller settings. So here, guys, on my assist settings, I am going to be running a manual transmission, which I'm probably going to guess and say that's not all that surprising. My TC is going to be on 0, but I would probably say you might be able to run 1 and 2 on this one. Might end up helping the Testarossa a bit. Besides that, on the ABS, though, I am going to be on default. I would say people can say you can run weak, which I would also recommend, but I can also say you can run default, which is basically what I have been running on every single online time trial. Besides that, all these are going to be off here. My active stability management is on, and my counter steering assistance is on weak. Besides that, though, when it does come to my controller settings, it is pretty much going to be completely stock. I have not touched any of this stuff at all. I do know people have talked about the controller steering sensitivity and all that, but again, mine is going to be on 0. Last tip I do want to say here is if you guys are struggling, head over to the ghost settings on the bottom. Kind of clicked on that a tad too fast, but looking at this, though, I would recommend having the personal ghost on and the display loaded ghost. That way you can look at some of the better drivers that are getting higher scores on it. Like, doesn't have to necessarily be top 10, but maybe like a higher time on it, so that way you can end up chasing it. Then you're also going to have your personal ghost pretty much right there with it, so you can see where you mess up on turns, or like I did at one of the corners. I do know for a fact I wasn't as fast as my previous time in that area. So I would definitely recommend, if you are struggling, try having the display ghosts on, guys. I really do think it helps so much in these events. But besides all that, though, moving over to the track part of it, so this one I'm probably going to be a tad newer to this one. I really have not driven on this track all that often in most of the campaign races and stuff, but really have not done anything on this track besides those. And I also have never driven the Testarossa ever in this game, so I was like, okay, well, this is going to be an interesting one. But besides that, though, when you are starting this one off, guys, similar to the other time trials, you're basically going to have a rolling start until you get to the starting slash finish line of the actual event. So the first turn you're probably going to encounter, there can be a few different ways to do this one. One of the ways you could probably do is basically when approaching that turn, pretty much stay in third gear, brake a little bit, like before you get to that corner, then pretty much fly through that turn in third gear, then basically come out of it. The second way you could probably do this, though, is probably the method I did end up doing, is pretty much shift down into second gear to aim the car into the turn a tad tighter. That way, pretty much right after, you could shift the car into third gear once you are basically aiming at it better, and then you could pretty much fly out of that said turn even quicker. This is one thing I was noticing, like, yeah, you probably don't have to go in second gear, but I would recommend trying that out, though, because I feel like going down an extra gear, especially in this event, guys, I feel like it will help in a lot of different corners. This one you can basically shift down into second, make the car a tad slower, then boom, go right back into third gear once the car is going to be at a better angle, and then immediately start hitting that throttle and accelerating. You are probably going to be tad surprised how much faster you can be out of it, and also how much more speed you will end up getting, because again, this is the final corner in the entire event, so it's going to be pretty dang important. Besides that, we're then going to have a straightaway, which is going to bring us into the next corner. This one I'm going to say is probably going to be a tad tricky because, well, you could probably take this one in a lot of different angles and get through it a tad faster in that method, but you can also mess up this corner so many times. Ask me how I know, because I kind of mess it up way too many times myself. For a few of the reasons, though, I would probably go a tad too quick, like, oh, let me accelerate a tad more on the straightaway, right? You then approach the turn, brake a tad too late. You're then going to be taking that turn even wider, which is going to make you slower. And the point of the time trials is to, well, be faster. You know what I mean? But For this turn though, the big thing I would recommend doing, guys, slowing down a tad earlier in it, basically aiming toward the right side of it. That way you're probably going to be in second to third gear again. You can shift down into second if you need to on this corner and then basically shift it right back into third, aiming the car basically into the corner. The reason for that is it will probably make you attack quicker, but for this run I did end up getting my time on. I was actually going to be in third gear the entire time on it because I was aiming at braking a tad better, aiming the car into the corner at the best angle possible. If you are going to do that when you are coming down that hill, you basically can go into the green part on the left side and fully accelerate basically down the hill. This is going to be insanely important because we all do know, well, if you do end up messing up one corner, it can drastically change the time in the event. We're then going to have a small hill that you will end up climbing, then boom, the next corner is legit going to be right there. But I was noticing something though, guys. Slow down a tad earlier. It's definitely worth doing. At first, I was trying to do a few runs where I would speed up a bit, maybe brake later, take the turn a tad wider, maybe accelerate out of it a tad quicker, but to be honest, it really wasn't working that great. The best way I found to do this one is to basically slow down probably a bit earlier, get the car into first gear, take the turn a lot tighter to the right side of it, then start accelerating. The second you get toward the end of that corner, you can put in the second, kind of go on the left part of the track and accelerate much faster out of it. I really do feel like this is probably going to be the best way to do this one. Like, yeah, you could probably take it a tad wider, maybe keep it in second gear, but I really think it's going to make you much slower doing it that way. Besides that, we're then going to have a tiny straightaway, then boom, another left turn's coming up. And for this though, I would recommend being on the right side of the track, and I also did end up going into second gear. That way I could pretty much shift down the car again, aim this toward the left part of the corner, cutting that turn a bit. That way you can aim it to the straightaway, go over to the right part of the track, going off the track a bit, then immediately accelerating again. I feel like that's probably going to be the best way to do this one. Like, one thing I gotta admit, guys, this is also something I messed up on a turn later on this one, because I was pretty much going, okay, well, if I go a little faster, I'll brake later, but then you're most likely not going to be able to cut the track a bit. You'll stay on it, and guess what that's going to do? You are most likely going to lose hundredths of a second, which is going to be a big deal on these time trials. So again, I would basically brake a tad earlier, aim toward the left part of it, cut it. That way you can then aim for the straightaway and immediately hit that acceleration, becoming even faster out of it. I feel like that's the best way to do it. You're then going to have a small straightaway again going into a longer left turn. And I can't admit though, this corner can easily be messed up if you try to do what I was trying to do on it. And that was basically trying to be as fast as I can, then brake later. But guess what? Again, guys, taking that turn at a wider angle because you want to accelerate toward it isn't necessarily going to help you. What I would recommend doing though is aiming the car toward the right part of the track once you approach it. Start immediately slowing down, then pretty much going into second gear, taking it a tad tighter. That way, if you do take that turn at the right angle, because it's obviously a longer left turn, you will be able to accelerate earlier, get your finger on that throttle or your foot if you're using a wheel. I'm obviously not, but being able to fully accelerate out of that corner, hitting the gas down quicker is definitely going to make you much faster coming out of the corner. Instead of having to like brake in the middle of it, that will definitely make you slower. Besides that, we're then going to have a normal straightaway. For this, you'll probably get like maybe 120 plus miles an hour before the next corner, maybe 130-ish. Then you're eventually going to have to slow down, pretty much aiming the car into it again. For this, guys, I would recommend pretty much being in third gear. I found that to be a sweet spot on it. You are most likely going to be in the high of the fourth gear there when getting to the corner. I would recommend going down into third. I found that to be the best way. And then from there, though, you're pretty much going to want to hug the right part of that corner in third gear, pretty much accelerating out of it. I would say that's going to be the quickest way on this one, guys. I was messing this turn up a bit until I was like, okay, well, if I go into third gear, I feel like that is better, because at first I was trying fourth, but that was obviously going to be too high of a gear into it. I figured if I brake a little bit, then, maybe fly into the corner, but no. Going into third, guys, hugging the right part of that corner, pretty much easing on the throttle, and then getting toward the right part of it. That way you can start accelerating. You can also hug the left part of that turn, going off the road slightly on the side of the road a bit, but I would recommend trying not to do that unless you absolutely have to. But I would say if you do have to do that, guys, it's not that big of an issue. We're then going to have another turn, of course, right after that one. For this, though, you will probably want to be on the left part of the track all the way over there, because you can get the best angle, because you can actually cut part of this turn a bit going over the right side of it. not into the grass, but very close to it. That is going to make this turn much faster. And I was noticing a few times I was trying to take it around like, okay, well, I'm not going to cut the turn. Let me brake later. And guess what? That doesn't work. Even braking earlier, guys, try not to cut the corner. You still will lose time on it. So I would recommend trying to cut that one. It will put you at a perfect angle. And that is the biggest thing I noticed about this corner, though, because if you do end up taking that right, guys, you are going to cut it a bit. That is going to legit set you up perfectly for that small straightaway. That way you can immediately start accelerating. Like, yeah, you're probably going to go off the track a bit, but that's okay because you can do it in that area. And it's going to allow you to basically slam the acceleration down, having even more speed. You're then going to have a small patch of road with the immediate next corner coming up. To be honest, guys, this was the corner that was giving me the most problems, including the run I did end up having 138.5 on. I messed up legit only this corner, which definitely costed me probably 0.2 hundredths or so of a second, which was kind of unfortunate, but I was like, whatever, let's keep going, let's get this done. For this corner, though, do not do what I did end up doing, guys. I basically braked a tad later, and I was turning a tad too late, so guess what? I couldn't cut the corner the way I wanted to do it, but just like the previous corner, though, you can also cut this one, which is going to shave off some time as well if you hit that at the right angle. For me, I would say keep the car in third gear. That's probably going to be the best way to do it. At first, when I was practicing, I was trying to go into second gear and stuff, but to be honest, third gear is definitely the way to do it. For this, you guys will definitely want to cut the corner on the right side just slightly. That is going to make this a lot faster than what I did end up doing. But even then, I still did end up getting gold, so I guess it's kind of a win. But it's also unfortunate because I did mess up this corner, and well, crazy how if you mess up one area, that's kind of going to cost you. We're then going to have a small straightaway after that, guys. You're probably going to approach it, probably on the right side, immediately going to the left of it. Most likely going to be in second to third gear. What I did end up doing, similar to that first annoying corner, is I put the car in a second, pretty much aiming the car into the turn, then boom, immediately went into third and just started accelerating. And what's really cool, though, is the more I did end up doing this method in this corner, it definitely made me faster every time I did it. I did have a few runs where I stayed in second gear, came out of it, then shifted later. I was always slower doing that method. I was then like, okay, well, let's put the car in a second, aim the car into it, then put it in the third immediately, then start accelerating right after, guys. It definitely works so much better in that aspect. We're then going to have that final stretch of road again, which when you did start, that is pretty much where you were going to be with the final corner coming up. And as I did mention earlier, though, I would recommend putting the car into second. That way you can aim it into it, immediately go back into third, guys, and just accelerate as fast as you possibly can. Like, yeah, you could probably brake if you wanted to, then, you know, stay in third gear. But I would recommend trying to go into second because doing that actually made me quicker. And I also flew out of that turn faster than my Ghost did. And what made me laugh on this run, though, is when I was going around that turn, guys, I saw my Ghost pop up. I was like, dang, I'm too slow. I immediately was able to accelerate even faster because I aimed the car better into it, and I basically flew past the Ghost toward the finish line. This is something I would recommend doing. I know a lot of the other people have talked about this. The YouTubers have said it, and that was something I was aiming at because I was also trying to get better, so I did see someone mentioning that. And I was like, okay, let me try this. So downshifting into that corner, aiming it into it, really is going to allow you to accelerate even faster because you downshift, aim the car, shift back up into the next gear. You can immediately start accelerating. It's so dang great. Besides all of that, though, guys, here's the gold run I did end up getting in the Ferrari Testarossa. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comments below.